There's a space between the moment someone says they want it and the moment they sign the contract. And in that space, everything can go wrong. We're going to talk about commitments, and we're going to talk about it next with Matt Rocco on Purpose Under Pressure. Welcome back. My name is Brian, and this is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about developing sales and leadership success on purpose and under pressure. And it's brought to you by the professional sales and leadership training team at Sandler by the Ruby Group. You'll find them in Akron and in Columbus, Ohio. They're in Jacksonville, Florida. They're in Capital Region, New York. They do their work on purpose so that you and your team can represent that way. You've got to know what it is. You've got to know what you're made for. You've got to know what you're built for. You've got to know what you're trying to accomplish. If you don't know, they can help you figure that out too. Regardless, you've got to have a purpose. You can't just wing it. You can't just hope to make a lot of money. You can make a lot of money, and that's all well and good, but let's build something on purpose that's going to last a long time and make everybody around you better for it. That's what I like. That's what Sandler by the Ruby Group likes, and I think that's what you're going to like too when you reach out to them at Sandler by the Ruby Group. You can find them at therubygroup.sandler.com. The Ruby Group, developing stronger sales teams for tougher conversations. So let's get cooking. One of the hardest things about being a salesperson, and if you're a salesperson, you know it as well as I do because we've seen it happen many times, is nailing down the deal. You might get the yes. You might think you get the yes. You get the head nodding. Yep. I'm in. You might get a handshake. Handshakes used to be worth something. You might get a handshake. You might get a fist bump on your way out the door, but getting the commitment, that autograph on the dotted line, man, that is tough, maybe tougher than ever. Things can go sideways before you do. And so I wanted to talk with Matt Rocco. He is a partner and a trainer at Sandler by the Ruby Group. I wanted him to join me this week to talk about what's going on here, why it seems like the yes turns into a no, even when it seems so obvious and so easy. So, Matt, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be here.
I'm glad you're here because this is really hard. We think we get the yes. We think everything's going good. It's happened to me too. I say yes on something and then I get buyer's remorse or who knows what happens that makes me change my mind because I think a seller's job isn't done until he gets that commitment, right? Is that a correct thing, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, if you think through many stages of the sales conversation, there's these gaps where you go between a great meeting or what you felt like at least was a good meeting and then an actual next step. So you hear things that to an untrained seller and someone who maybe is newer to sales, you hear things that sound like a commitment, but they're simply just the prospect maybe being polite. And if we confuse that politeness with true progress, maybe they're even saying things like, hey, send me this, or I'm going away and I'm going to be thinking about this. And if we allow that to be where it ends, a lot of times that means that call truly did end without any clarity. And so without that next step agreed to, do you really have a deal? Do you really have something that's going to move forward? A lot of times you think you do, and then the thing just disappears on you or it goes stagnant. And we're sitting there sometimes wondering, okay, what did I do wrong? What happened?
And so I want to talk about how we can make sure that doesn't happen because that's not good for anyone. But I'm interested too in, is it the buyer trying to just say anything he needs to say just to kind of get us off his back? Or is it the seller that kind of has happy ears and wants to hear the yes, thinks he hears the yes, and then moves on? Who's fooling who here, Matt?
It's the perfect storm. I'd say both are correct. You have a buyer that is maybe mildly interested. Other times they're truly not interested and they're just giving you a little bit of a smoke screen to try to throw you off. But you do have sellers who many times, they're in this world where they're consistently having to go for, getting some commitment and getting answers. And when they don't get it, they're willing to hear anything they can and let that be what takes them to the next step.
So what can a seller do to try to clarify things? First, he has to realize that he has to clarify things, but what can he do to make things a little more clear before he moves on?
Yeah, I think a real simple step is just differentiating the difference between what's interest from the prospect, which is something along the lines of, hey, this is worth hearing more about, or something where they're actually looking to make a commitment. And if you can identify that when you're in those conversations, the commitment would be, I'm willing to do this next thing to move this to the next level, right? And it'll be an involvement of time, access to them or other people on their team, information that they might be providing to you, or just simply a clear decision or path from them. That difference between interest, this is worth hearing about, and the commitment of I'm willing to do something next, that's what you should start by looking at that.
I remember though when I was selling, when the buyer would start to nod his head and say things that I thought sounded like a deal, the last thing I wanted to do was push. And I always kind of was like, well, that's a yes. Don't screw this up by talking too much. I think sellers can avoid the issue of closing something down a little bit or pushing. They don't want to seem pushy. How what's happening there, and how can I feel more confident in asking those kinds of follow-up questions?
Well, a big part of having success in sales is making sure that you do have the right mindset when you're walking in and meeting with the prospect. And part of being able to maintain the right mindset is going to be step one, making sure that you walk into every interaction saying, I want to serve this person at a very high level. And if I discover at any point that what I do and how I help customers and how I work with businesses, if I feel for even a minute that there's not a fit here, I'm going to be the one to call the timeout, right? So when we are approaching every sale environment from that standpoint, you can then go into it saying, I'm going to make sure that everything that I'm doing on this call, it either serves this client, either brings them to the next step, or if it doesn't, we go ahead and call it quits. And if you can keep that right here, then I think what you just asked, the interaction would be drastically different.
So you have to have the confidence to ask those questions, be willing to hear no, or maybe that it's going the opposite direction. And once you have that confidence, you can push that a little bit forward. I'm
You can.
interested then
You'll
what
push for the
happens.
you'll push for true commitment because you know that that's the only way you and them are going to reach an outcome that could serve both sides.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what everyone wants. So what if you're asking the right questions, you've got the confidence to ask the questions and you're not getting the commitment. All of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, this isn't as tight as I thought it was. What's going through the salesperson's head then? And what can he do about it to either switch it or end it? Right.
Yeah. I mean, well, number one, you need to understand from your side, what does a commitment look like? What is a real commitment? And for you, it could be something like, hey, we're booking the next meeting before we end this current one. Or you're agreeing to bring this person, a different stakeholder, a different piece of the puzzle into the next conversation. Or there's financial or different information that needs to be provided to move a deal forward. Whatever those commitments are, if it's a date, if it's information, if it's that clear next path, you have to know for your side what those look like. And you shouldn't get on a call without knowing, hey, at the end of this meeting, here's what I'm looking for. And when those aren't given, when those commitments aren't given, that's when you might say, hey, I've asked a couple of times for a commitment on the next step. I'm noticing that there's some hesitation. What is that? Or hey, I'm noticing in most cases when someone doesn't want to commit to the next step, there's a reason for it. Let's kind of unpack that. So I'd say any type of hesitation, you'd want to call it out on early on so that you're not having to then chase and have them disappear on you.
And Matt, you just made a clear designation for me. You said commitment on the next step. We're not just talking about the deal here, right? We're not just talking about the yes or the no. We're talking about what comes next.
Right. Yeah.
What does that mean? How can you help a salesperson understand that there's a lot of steps that we can commit to before we actually earn a new customer, correct?
It is. And everyone's sales cycle is going to be different. Are you a one call close? Are you two meetings, three meetings? Is there, sales engineers that come into the picture at some point to move this thing forward? And you have to know what those are. You have to understand, hey, this is what our sales process is based on what we're bringing to the table and what the needs are. Where I think you see reps struggle to get those commitments or even maybe ask for them is because there's enough bad acting out there where people are pushy, people are, doing it in a way where it doesn't serve the client like it should. And so people will hesitate to do it, or maybe there's someone who's just afraid to hear a no, and or they haven't earned the right to ask because during the discovery call they didn't go about it the right way. So it's a mix of it all.
What does that mean, haven't earned the right to ask?
I feel like if you go into a conversation with a prospect and from the beginning you start to uncover a few of the things they have going on in their business, a lot of sellers rush right away into starting to prescribe a solution, right? Instead of and so at that point you've held up here really surface and you haven't earned the right to really get a commitment because you haven't even gotten to the heart of really what's going on.
Yeah, so you're asking questions that you really don't even deserve the answer to, and the buyer doesn't feel compelled to give you a factual answer because you haven't treated him with the kind of respect that you ought to show. I'm interested here as we kind of wrap up. What if you can't get the commitment? What does a salesperson do if they're asking the questions and they're just not getting the right signs? Is it automatically okay next, or is there something that you can do to move it forward?
Well, that starts at the beginning of the call, believe it or not. So, what if we, instead of getting to the end of a call and trying to, lock them in with some type of commitment, what if we started our calls a little bit different? What if we established at the very beginning of the call that, hey, the expectations are before we get off this call, like one of two things could happen. And what if we clarify within the beginning of that call, hey, this is what next steps would look like if we feel like we can work together, or this is what it might look like if we say, hey, there's not a reason for us to continue to tackle this thing. And so you can address it at the beginning.
That's tremendous. And if you're not getting there, you can say, look, we said that we're going to have some kind of a conversation here at the end. What needs to happen to make that happen? And sometimes they'll say, you know what, we're all done. And that's okay, isn't it, Matt? Tell me it's okay.
It there's Would you rather hear early on in your relationship with the potential prospect, would you rather hear it early that, hey, it's probably not a fit? Or would you rather get down the road when you've put a lot of effort and energy and time into putting together the proposal and working through a lot of specifics to then find out, hey, it's just not a fit, right? We'd rather hear that early. We'd rather hear it often so that we can redirect our efforts onto the, types of projects that do have the greatest chance of closing and have success.
You know, Matt, one of the coolest things about Sandler by the Ruby Group, and maybe Sandler in general, is you spend almost as much, if not more time, talking about getting a no, talking about that clear process. It's not all about getting the yes. It's about doing it right. It's about doing it on purpose and figuring out what the buyer really needs, what they really want to do, and helping them make those good decisions. And that's what I love about being a professional salesperson. And that's what I love about Sandler by the Ruby Group. And Matt, you represent well. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Great to be on.
Yeah, I'm glad you were here, folks. I hope you liked that. It's so basic. It's so elemental, maybe even simple, but don't try to push something forward if it's not ready to be pushed forward. And don't walk away if it's not ready to be pushed forward. You got to stick with it. You got to finish the job. Thanks for being here. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. It's brought to you by my friends at the Ruby Group, developing stronger sales teams for tougher conversations. And until next time, no matter how high the pressure gets, just stay on purpose.